On the evening of October 23rd, 2009, a 15-year-old girl led police officers deep into the woods of St. Martin's, Missouri. In the middle of the city, surrounded by trees and shadows, she pointed to a shallow grave. What the officers uncovered there wasn't just a missing child. It was the beginning of one of the most chilling cases in American criminal history. The girl who led them there wasn't a witness, nor a concerned citizen. She was the one who had dug the grave. Who was Alyssa Bustamante? What could drive a teenager to commit such a horrifying act? This is the story of a troubled girl, a senseless murder, and a warning about the darkness that can sometimes grow undetected in the minds of the young. In the mid-2000s, social media was just beginning to take shape. Teenagers, often unsupervised, found comfort and validation in dark corners of the internet, sharing their emotions, frustrations, and even violent fantasies. Emo and goth subcultures were on the rise, creating a space where pain could be expressed, even romanticized. And for some, like Alyssa Bustamante, these digital echoes may have been the only place she felt seen. Born on January 28, 1994 in Cole County, Missouri, Alyssa's life was troubled from the start. Her parents, both teenagers battling addiction and instability, were in no position to raise a child. Her mother, Michelle, was repeatedly arrested for drug possession and driving under the influence. Her father, Cesar, had his own problems, and eventually ended up in prison when Alyssa was just 7. Responsibility for Alyssa and her siblings fell to their maternal grandparents, Karen and Gary Brooke. Karen, a devout Mormon, tried to instill discipline and structure, weekly church attendance, strict routines, but for Alyssa, the damage had already taken root. By age 13, she had become isolated, angry, and emotionally withdrawn. She began self-harming, cutting her arms with razors, and once carved the word hate into her abdomen. On September 3, 2007, her grandparents found her unconscious in the bathroom, bleeding and having overdosed on painkillers. Though she survived, doctors diagnosed her with major depression and bipolar disorder. She was prescribed Prozac, and for a time there was hope that Alyssa might recover. But as she returned to school and resumed posting online, her true feelings surfaced. Blood-red lipstick, haunting selfies, and captions like, "I'm not insane, I'm just angry." She wasn't healing. She was unraveling. Alyssa didn't just embrace darkness, she flaunted it. Online, she called herself Okamikage, a Japanese phrase meaning shadow wolf. Her bio was a chilling declaration. "I love cutting myself and killing people." One of her videos showed her younger twin brothers being shocked by an electric fence, writhing in pain while Alyssa laughed behind the camera. It wasn't a joke. It was a warning. Her behavior outside the home wasn't much different. She distanced herself from classmates, clashed with teachers, and covered her arms in hundreds of self-inflicted cuts. At just 15, her inner world was spiraling out of control. During a party, she confided in a friend, "I wonder what it would feel like to kill someone." The friend brushed it off, just edgy teen talk, she thought. But not long after, Alyssa's psychiatrist increased her medication dosage. Her online posts turned even darker. "What I want out of life is to find a reason for all this pain." Then, just 2 days later, on October 21st, 2009, she made her move. That evening, Alyssa and her 6-year-old sister, Emma, walked to the home of 9-year-old Elizabeth Olten, a neighbor and friend. Alyssa convinced her to come over and play. Elizabeth hesitated. Her mother was cooking dinner and her siblings had choir practice, but eventually agreed under one condition. She had to be home before dark and keep her phone with her. Elizabeth never returned. As night fell, her mother, Patricia, called her phone again and again. No answer. Panic set in. At 11 p.m., dozens of volunteers were searching the woods nearby. Police tried to trace the signal from Elizabeth's phone. It pinged in a wooded area just 4 blocks from her house. But there was one crucial detail. Elizabeth was terrified of the woods. She would never go there alone. And that night, it was cold, dark, silent. The search grew frantic. FBI agents, search dogs, divers, they combed through every inch of the area. But Elizabeth had vanished. That is, until one of the volunteers found something strange, a newly dug hole in the middle of the forest floor. When police first returned to the wooded area and examined the shallow grave reported by volunteers, they found nothing, but suspicions remained. So they went back to square one and revisited the last person known to have seen Elizabeth alive, Alyssa Bustamante. At first, she claimed Elizabeth had simply gone missing while playing outside. But under growing pressure, her story began to shift. She said Elizabeth had gotten caught in some thorn bushes and Emma, Alyssa's little sister, had asked her for help. After that, she said, she hadn't seen the girl again. The police didn't believe her. They started watching Alyssa closely, and something didn't sit right. She seemed calm, too calm, especially for someone close to a missing child case. When asked about the shallow grave, Alyssa casually claimed she had dug it to bury dead animals. But a search warrant for her room told a darker story, disturbing drawings on the walls, messages written in what looked like blood, journal entries about pain, violence, and the thrill of cutting. And then they found it, an entry dated October 21st. The ink had been scrubbed out, but forensic experts recovered the original writing. I just killed someone. I strangled them, slit their throat, and stabbed them. It was amazing. I'm kind of nervous and shaky now. I have to go to church. The shock was immediate. Not only had she confessed on paper, she'd referred to someone as if it could have been anyone. Even worse, investigators found not one but 2 graves dug in the woods. Could there have been more victims? Though no other children were reported missing, police feared Elizabeth might not have been her only target. One of the graves was empty, but the other held the lifeless body of Elizabeth Olten. Alyssa had hidden it so well, even trained officers and search dogs had missed it the first time. She was arrested on the spot. Charged with first-degree murder, Alyssa was taken to Cole County Jail. An autopsy confirmed what her journal already described. Elizabeth had been strangled, stabbed repeatedly in the chest, and her wrists and throat had been slashed. Later, investigators reconstructed the timeline. Alyssa had skipped school on October the 16th to dig the grave. 5 days later, Emma invited Elizabeth to come play. While the girls were distracted, Alyssa called her sister away, then led Elizabeth into the woods, struck her, choked her until she lost consciousness, and stabbed her 8 times to make sure she was dead. Then, as if nothing had happened, she returned home and went on with her evening. Despite confessing and leading police to Elizabeth's body, Alyssa later pled not guilty. While awaiting trial, she displayed severe anxiety and depression, even attempting to harm herself by cutting her own fingernails down to the skin. Concerned for her safety, doctors requested she be transferred to a psychiatric hospital. The judge agreed, and Alyssa was moved first to Gorn Children's Psychiatric Facility, then to Fulton State Hospital for further evaluation. Her trial was delayed until 2012. But before it could begin, Alyssa changed her plea. On January 10th, she pled guilty to second-degree murder and armed criminal action, avoiding a first-degree murder conviction. The court now faced the task of deciding her sentence. During the hearing, Alyssa calmly admitted to slitting Elizabeth's throat. Her grandmother couldn't bear to hear it. She stormed out of the courtroom in tears. Psychologists testified that Alyssa suffered from major depression, borderline personality traits, and emotional instability. Her lawyers argued for leniency, citing her age, trauma, and mental health struggles. But prosecutors pushed for the maximum. They emphasized her journal, the two graves, and the cold, calculated planning behind the murder. On February 8, 2012, Alyssa Bustamante was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 35 years. She will be eligible in 2044 at the age of 50. Alyssa later tried to appeal, citing a Supreme Court decision that mandatory life sentences for juveniles were unconstitutional. But the appeal was denied. In 2015, Elizabeth's mother filed a civil lawsuit against her, leading to a court-ordered agreement requiring Alyssa to report any income she earns related to the case. Surprisingly and disturbingly, Alyssa began receiving fan mail. Dozens of letters poured in from troubled teens idolizing her, calling her misunderstood, even demanding her release. Meanwhile, Elizabeth's family still grieves, and Alyssa remains behind bars at the Women's Eastern Reception, Diagnostic and Correctional Center in Missouri. She continues to claim she is a normal person, but officials disagree. Alyssa refuses treatment, and guards describe her as manipulative and dangerous. Whether she truly regrets her actions remains unclear. What we do know is this: nothing justifies what she did. Had she received proper care and intervention, Elizabeth Olten might still be alive today. And maybe, just maybe, Alyssa Bustamante wouldn't have become a killer. This was the story of a girl whose pain turned into cruelty, and a crime that should never have happened. If you found this case disturbing but important, consider subscribing to the channel for more stories like this. Because sometimes the scariest monsters aren't in the shadows, they're right next door.